All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of the Systems Wealth podcast. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, a friend, someone I consider to be a mentor and a big inspiration to my life, Clay Raterman. Clay, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Thank you, Noah. I'm pumped to be here, and for Noah's future audience that will be listening, this is I've been so excited for you to start this podcast, so I can't wait.
I appreciate it, man. And you've obviously been a huge support so far and have talked me through a lot of the challenges, which we're definitely going to get into today. Us both being entrepreneurs, creators, just being that sort of that type. I think we relate on a lot of the issues that we run into sometimes. So, we're definitely able to help each other and relate and work that way through. But where I want to start is just a little bit of a background of kind of your like story up until this point, like, how let's start with like college, because I know your story with walking on at Ohio State is obviously a big part of who you are and sort of your story up until this point. So yeah, let's start there and then kind of just detail to where you are and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to tie in the career and personal life stuff as much as I possible and keep it fairly succinct. But
Perfect.
grew up in Ohio. I basically I spent most of my life in Ohio, at least from sixth grade on to college, really. And I played football as my main sport. But in high school, I actually didn't start on my football team until I was a senior in high school. So I wasn't actually a starter until I was a senior.
Yep.
Up until that point, though, I would say, like, as a kid growing up, very good athlete, crushing it. Hit high school, I was smaller than most of the other people. And so I had trouble in early high school in sports, and then, kept at it. I think I developed a good work ethic in the weight room because I was so much smaller than everybody.
Yep.
So got pretty fortunate my senior year of high school to do well in football, and started to get that a little bit of interest from college teams. It was like it wasn't anything crazy. It was like maybe D2 or D1
And what were
AA
you playing? Were you a
schools.
linebacker? Were you like, I forget what position?
I was playing corner.
Oh,
So
you're playing corner. Okay.
I played receiver, and I couldn't start there because there were some other good receivers on our team.
Of course.
And I couldn't break that barrier. And so I was like, what am I going to do?
Right.
Switch to corner. And then ultimately decided that I was done with football after high school.
Yep.
I just didn't have, like, none of the teams that were reaching out to me were like anything that really interested me. I'm the type of person, like, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it at the highest possible level,
Of course.
not just, do it for this, the sake of doing it. So I've always wanted to go to Ohio State. I actually I was deferred from the school, which means, like, I applied for the early acceptance, didn't get in.
Yep.
And then after I was deferred, they actually waitlisted me. So I was deferred and waitlisted. So I barely, the final day of my senior year, get a letter, barely get accepted to Ohio State.
Okay.
Like I was probably the last person to be accepted that year. Like, quite literally, it was on the last day they could accept people. So that was wild. I always did well in school, so it wasn't like I didn't do well. It's just very competitive environment.
Of course.
Make it to school, went to Ohio State. Actually didn't even make it into my major. I tried to study finance. Wasn't accepted in the major originally.
No way.
Well.
Wow.
So that's a whole thing in college. You have to get accepted into the major, which is yeah, it's interesting. I'm like, why am I paying for this? You guys won't even let me learn what I'm supposed to learn. So anyway, I'm in school, and it's my freshman year, and my grandpa, who's like my biggest supporter growing up in sports, he has cancer at the time, and he's like a massive Ohio State football fan. And he actually really wanted me to go to a different school and to continue playing football.
Okay. Yeah.
So he actually, like, my freshman year was 2014 in college, and Ohio State wins the national championship that year.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there as
Stack
a
team.
student,
Jeez.
just like, dude, first of all, my first year in college, we win the national championship.
Right.
That's awesome. But I was actually really disappointed because I was like, there was a part in me that felt like I could be that, like I could be out there. I should be out there playing. I could be a part of the team.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get rid of that feeling. And at the same time, my grandpa entered hospice care, which is like when you're on the last leg of your life. And so I made him a promise, like bedside, right before he passed away. I was like, private, just the two of us. I was like, hey, I know you've always wanted me to go on and play in college. I'm going to walk on at Ohio State. So I told him that. He passed away about a week and a half, 2 weeks later. And I was the only one that knew that I made that promise.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, once you do that, you're like I didn't even work. I tried to walk on after that, but there was no like process. I had no clue how to do it. I'm an off the streets walk on. I had no connections. It wasn't like I knew anybody on the team.
Right.
It was like completely just foreign. So I did everything I could to get around the facility. Like that was like step one. It's like, oh,
really?
maybe I can go get around the facility.
Yeah.
So I started like walking around. I tried to email a bunch of people. I found there was like a fastest students race at Ohio State.
Yep.
And it was put on by the football team. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is like a way to like impress them. So I did that the first year and I made it to the finals and then I lost, which was a bummer.
Were you like working out and training at this like during this time? Just like that's just you. That's just the way that you are.
Since 8th grade, 9th grade, I would say freshman and sophomore year, I hated working out.
Yeah.
Because I was so small compared to everyone and weak. But then junior and senior year, and ever since then, I've probably been working out 15.
For anyone watching the video right now, you can see Clay's shoulders and the way that he's built, but him in person, he's got some big arms, guys. It's no joke. It's for real.
I appreciate that. we hit arms a couple times.
Yes, we did.
Basically, at that point in school, like I literally had no idea. This was the first big win in my life because this really let me know. I mean, I would say that senior year of high school, like having a lot of success in football meant a lot to me because again, it was something I definitely manifested.
Right.
And I had to work really hard for, but this was the first time in my life that I did something that I didn't know was possible for myself. Everybody you talked to back then would have been like, oh, he's not going to like, if I would have said, I'm going to play football at Ohio State, everyone would be like, oh yeah, sure, dude.
Right.
Like it's the top 1% of athletes and, yeah, it's a top school and all this stuff. There's less than 100 spots. So, and I'm off the streets, just like at the school. So basically, I continue on, do the fastest student race, lose, go back, do the fastest student race the next year. And I actually win. And I'm like, yeah, this is my chance.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't do anything. So then I'm like, well, that didn't help. Finally, I figure out that there's a tryout at Ohio State towards the tail end of or it's actually it's coming up in August. It's a weird August tryout. And my luck, I took a job at Rogue, if anyone knows what Rogue Fitness is.
Of course.
I took a job at Rogue. They're actually headquartered in Columbus.
I didn't know
that job because one, it sounded awesome and I loved working out.
Right.
But two, because then I got access to their private gym that I just grinded in all summer.
Nice.
So I knew when the tryout date was, or I knew when the tryout range was like sometime in August was what the person told me.
Right.
So that's all I needed to know. I was like, there's a potential chance that you're telling me there's an open tryout. Like I'm gonna blow their minds when I get to this thing.
Right.
So what a lot of people screw up with trying to walk on places is they don't realize what they're being tested on. It's not like you're showing up and doing a football practice. It has nothing to do with your football skills anyway. It has everything to do with how you look, genetic potential, how fast you are, your 40-yard dash, your like all your like almost like an NFL combine type stats.
Right.
That's what they're looking at. They have no idea if you're good at football or not.
Right.
And so I'm preparing for that over and over. And I have a weird scenario where my brother and I get accepted to be on the TV show American Ninja Warrior. It's the same summer. The date of our filming for American Ninja Warrior is the same date as the tryout.
No way,
so
dude.
The day I'm supposed to fly out to LA, to Hollywood to film the show.
Right.
Literally the day I'm flying out, that they already booked the tickets for me, is the same day as the tryout.
Man.
But and life is weird like that. Like honestly, the story is I'm leaving out a lot of parts.
Yeah, of course.
For the sake of time, but the story is very interesting. Basically, I I just lied to the producers on the TV show. My grandpa's promise obviously meant a lot more than me, a lot more to me. So I just lied to the producers, bought my own flight that was a red eye, like through the night to get out there.
Wow.
After the tryout.
No
so I went
way.
to the tryout.
Wow.
And I crushed it at the first tryout. The first tryout was like, I ran a 4.540, like hit all the marks that I wanted to hit.
Jeez.
And I didn't make the team. So
oh no.
They like basically didn't accept anyone at that particular tryout. They didn't have roster spots, so I don't even know why. I think maybe they had to hold one for some reason.
Yep.
But a friend of mine from high school that played football with me there actually was also at the tryout, and he had this weird connection. He almost had like an in, and that person told him, hey, we don't have roster spots, but come back. I'm going to reach out to this other kid specifically to try to get him on in the winter time. So I basically at that point thought it was over. Like I thought I was too old. I was getting too old into college. I just had gone on American Ninja Warrior. We did well. I mean, we didn't win the show or anything, but we did fine. But I felt like crap after that because it was just like, I worked so hard for all this stuff and nothing really, like when you're back in your apartment and all the excitement's over and you kind of did the thing you're trying to do and you didn't achieve the result. It's a very deflating feeling.
Of course.
And the only thing I could do at that time was just keep, like, I wasn't even working in the sense of like, I think I'm going to make it next time. It was just like, all I know how to do is work at this point. So I'm just going to keep working.
Yep. Put your head down, keep working.
And yeah, it wasn't like exciting. I was very like depressed for like a little period of time there. It wasn't like rah, this is it was just, this is my life. And I just work. Like that's literally what the result came back to.
For sure.
And so a couple months later, life is also weird. Like I almost gave up on it. I basically did give up on it. And the idea of what I thought it was going to be at least.
Right.
And then randomly get a text message from a friend that said, hey, it was like a picture of like Ohio State football tweeted out. They're going to have a random pop-up tryout in the winter. And I was like, no way. And I almost missed the meeting for it. It was that, like, he sent it to me that day. And had I not seen that, I wouldn't have made it in time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had to leave class. I just left class and ran to the facility.
I love it.
So I left class, ran to the facility, get signed up for it, do the tryout. I obviously did worse because I wasn't like as prepared as the first time.
Of course.
And I still ran the 4.5, which was helpful. And then
crazy.
And then I actually, even that time, I'm walking out of the building, didn't make it. Like they take your slip of paper, and like if they take your slip of paper, that means they want to talk to you after. Okay. They had held back maybe 2-3 people.
Right.
And there's probably 100 there or something like that. And so those 2 to 3 people, they had held them back to talk to them, but they didn't hold me back. So they were like, I was dismissed to leave. As I was leaving to walk off the field, I'm heated because I know I had better numbers than all these other people. And I'm like, this is like a personal attack at this point. And I'm walking off to the sideline and the safeties coach stops me and pulls me aside completely from everyone else.
Yep.
And I was like, because the main guy that makes the decision was the walk-on coordinator at the time.
Yep.
And he wouldn't have taken me. 100% wouldn't have taken me.
Okay.
This specific person took me outside of everybody else. Had it not been for him, his name's Matt. Thank God for Matt. He's like one of my favorite people to this day.
Big time.
Had it not been for him, I would not have made the team.
Dude, again.
Wild. So made it that time. Had a crazy journey. We became Big Ten champions. A lot of cool stuff happened. Cotton Bowl champions. Had an amazing experience playing for Ohio State after that. But that experience in my life definitely formed. I mean, first of all, there's so many hard things you go through during football, but to reach that point, I almost realized a lot about life and how things happen and the way things work and manifesting different things and how they pan out. It never works how you think it is. It's always different. You never ask for enough. There's so many lessons that I took from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, to catch you up to today, left college, had a finance degree. I actually graduated in the top 1% of my class in finance. So for them not letting me into the major. We escaped and made it out on a good note. So left there, didn't want to work in finance, which is funny because I'm back in it now. Wanted to just work on my own stuff in the startup world. Started a bunch of failed startups, nothing worked. Ran out of money, had to take a job. That brought me to Austin, Texas.
Yep.
Took a job at Oracle. Had my first success with a friend of mine in business. It was a financial services company that we grew pretty quickly. That while I was there, we grew up from 0 to around 6.5 million in sales in the first year
Insane.
and a quarter.
Crazy.
So that was the first good success under the books. I didn't have equity in that company, which is looking back, I was like the second person on. And yeah, I should have definitely structured things differently or worked that differently. But honestly, everything works out how it's supposed to in the end.
Always. Right.
So left that company, started another company, and did I'm trying to think. The second company that I started, the marketing company.
This is not about right.
Yeah, I did over 6 figures with in my first year of business with that company. And then went on to start a software company that I'm working on now. And honestly, I've gotten into so many different things. I've been raising capital for some investment funds, hedge funds, things like that. And then working with Noah on some things, building software. So I have a lot of stuff going on. And I split my time very strategically. And I'm in the phase of life right now still where I haven't on purpose, I'm tasting a lot of things, if that makes sense.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Well, what I love about you is like you say those things like it's so casually. Like I started this business and where I was involved in this, we grew it to 6.5 million. And then I went and started this other business and did 6 figures. And now I'm working on the software. Like you're someone that I've always admired with your energy. You are someone that really does live and breathe like the law of reciprocity, where you give so much value. And like that, it's just why you find magic in your life. Like I've been able to witness what
you as well. It's 100%. Like that's why we connect so much.
Of course, 100%. And I want to go back a little bit to like your experience as an athlete. Like, and it's something that I take and I hold very dearly. Like being a walk-on at Oregon, same sort of deal. Like I had a similar experience of a belief in yourself that nobody else can see, like having a vision that nobody else really sees. Like I think that is, sports teach you just so much about leadership and teamwork and working when nobody else is watching and like putting in that extra effort, like all that good stuff. So it's that, but it's also the magic of being prepared for an opportunity that doesn't necessarily exist yet, like putting in that work and putting your head down and grinding with no real like idea of what this is going to turn into. Because what I tell myself a lot, and what I've told a lot of people that like I either a coach or just consulting with, is like the projects that you're working on right now, the things that you're doing right now are preparing you for opportunities to work with, like on a project that doesn't even exist yet, with people that you haven't even met yet, with like skills that you've yet to cultivate, like just putting in that work and like those opportunities come. There's a Winston Churchill quote that I'll pull up sometime, but it's like, it's so sad to, have an opportunity come to somebody and they're not prepared for it. And you can't really write that stuff, but like, just it's something that just the way that you are wired. And it's something that I really, really admire about you.
Dude, the unknown, like that, I think you put it so beautifully, like you're putting in work, and a lot of times people like they see something that they want in life and then they don't know how it's possible that thing could happen. Like they don't know the steps to get to that thing.
Right.
And so they don't think that it's going to be possible for them. And then they don't do anything.
Of course.
Whereas if you live the opposite, where you're like, I see the thing that I want, I have no clue how it's going to happen, but I'm just going to start today by putting in a lot of effort, and I'm just going to keep putting in effort, and hopefully that thing will somehow make its way to me. That usually works way better.
100%. But like people stop so early before seeing any results. Like I think it's like, for me, it was always, I could at least like see a person in my life that like, well, first it's like, knowing sort of what you want, which is obviously a really difficult question to even like step into. But like, if I can see that there's a person out there that has what I want or is living an idea of like what I think could be possible, then I can at least like start to extract, or I can find a mentor and invest or do something that is going to put me on that path. But it's like, what's so difficult about, especially just getting started, is like sometimes it takes a little while for the world to catch up to your work and your momentum. And if like,
Yes.
it's always like, you have the shift internally before like the physical reality ever catches up to you. It's the way it always is. But like,
It's like the compound interest effect
yes,
where it's like, if you do everything today, if you do like, let's say we're doing outreach for business, right?
right.
Say we send 100 emails today and 100 tomorrow and 100 the next day, and we do 100 for the next month. What's crazy about life is that we might get no results and then we quit.
Yeah.
But then 7 months later, one of those emails responds back to you and you don't even have that business anymore. But that 7 months
Yeah.
later, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm in.
Right.
And
You
then
just
you
never
had that
know.
moment. Like, imagine the momentum you could have had you kept
Yes.
with the thing.
Right. This is a question that I've always been super curious to ask you. And like we get deep into like how we perceive time. Time has always been like a big one for me. Like in your experience, have you seen like a gradual kind of growth in your, whether it's earning an income or just like careers and opportunities? Has that been gradual? Have you had massive spurts and then things kind of level off? Like what has been your experience with that?
I think it depends on the nature of what you're doing and how consistent you are with that particular thing.
Okay.
For me, it's been massive spurts and like peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Um, and it's because of the nature of the stage of life that I'm in right now,
Mhm.
where I'm tasting a lot of different things. When
Right.
you're tasting a lot of different things, you have big successes and you have times of drought and you have to balance those things. Um, when you're very dedicated on one specific thing, that's when you should ideally be seeing that very, very, very slow hockey stick that goes like this.
Interesting.
And I think it depends. At least that's been my experience. I think it depends on what stage of life you're at. Like, I don't want to optimize my life too early in the sense of
Mm.
like, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't have the blessing of knowing exactly to a T what it is that I want.
Right.
Like if I knew for a fact, like all I wanted to do was, go to the NFL or do whatever, be a pilot or do this or that, I would just only be following that one path. And I actually think that's a lot easier. And I think there's a lot of people out there like myself that don't exactly know. They just have a lot of interest and they have to go taste a lot of things.
Just the curiosity in it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And like, did you always kind of have like the, let's call it entrepreneurial kind of bug or spirit of like running and kind of owning your own company? Like, where did that come from for you?
Yeah, 100%. When I was younger, used to mow lawns and do all the basic entrepreneurial stuff. Like
Right.
everyone stories that people tell you, like I actually was doing that. Like in the sense of like, my friend and I would go and knock on doors and say, "Hey, can we mow your lawn for $20?" And we do it all the time. And because we wanted to buy video games or whatever we were trying to do.
Right. Times are simple.
Yeah. So yes, I definitely looking back had that. I was always intrigued by money, but it wasn't money that I was really intrigued by. I'm intrigued by leverage, is what I realized.
Good distinction.
What I mean by that is how can I get like the most I guess it's like how can I set myself up in a way that like I'm totally free and like the highest time for money output so that I can maximize my life in terms of experiences. Hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of a weird way of putting it, but
yeah.
I don't really care as much about money. I care a lot about freedom. I care a lot about my time and how I can leverage money to do things for me.
Dude, that's huge. Cause like I've noticed as I've progressed from, well, I started as like owning my own business when I was 19. I call it like play business owner. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I went,
Same. Plenty of startups.
Yeah, 100%. But like it's something that I found interesting of like experiencing sort of like the employee employer relationship. Like that's what I did from 20 to like 22. I had like the full-time job, and then going from that to a kind of client consultant relationship, I just realized the position of leverage of being in a place where I'm not necessarily paid on the amount of time that I'm inputting, like I'm being paid based on value now. And in that partnership sort of structure of not having an employer, like they just treat me differently. Like they just don't, they respect like my ideas, like what I'm bringing to the table. And I have positioned myself in what I think of like a place of leverage now where there's equity and ownership in a business. So now I'm being compensated based on like not only just like my value, but just like growth of a business itself, which then
Yeah.
makes me more motivated, which makes me feel more creative, which makes me want to like put more time and more effort into that. But your relationship with money growing up, like did you have to kind of figure it out on your own? Did you just read books? Like where did that curiosity for you come from?
Um, my I had a weird dynamic with money. I guess like my background with money growing up, because my parents were divorced. So my dad always had a stable income, but never gave us any money. So
Okay.
my dad's a special agent for Homeland Security. So he's always had like a good job, if you
Right.
will. He's always been well employed.
Right.
But he's also like I spent more time at my mom's than I did at my dad's growing up.
Okay.
And yeah, it was just like one of those weird things where it's like it's so strange, but it's like if I'm gonna get money from either of my parents, it's 100% gonna be my mom. I've never even asked my dad for money
Right.
ever. Like he's never never. There's never been a thing. And I think the reason why is because so I spent majority of the time at my mom's, meaning she won the court case. We split time. Like I still would go and see my dad. They lived really close, and honestly had an amazing time with divorced parents. Some people obviously don't, but I had a good scenario. Double Christmases for those out there. No, but I had two loving parents, and I felt like I got the best of both of them because they were divorced. I think it would have been terrible if they were together. But nonetheless, my dad's side, he paid child support or whatever the deal was. And so he always was like, no, I'm not giving you any money. And also we just never even really asked him because it just was like, we already knew the answer. Versus my mom was like always down to help us out with whatever she possibly could. But my mom had like no money.
Right.
So my mom was always struggling, to find jobs or and not like she's not an amazing person, could easily be employed. It wasn't that. It was that she followed a career path and she lost all her licensing because she obviously had us kids, thought that my dad was going to be the breadwinner.
Right.
They ended up getting divorced. So all of her licensing for social work had expired. So she had a really hard time for a few years just getting employment. And so, and obviously raising us kids like full time, being a single mom is very, very hard. And she did everything she could right for us. So I owe her the world for that. But yeah, I definitely had a little bit of, I knew the money situation was scarce on my mom's side,
Right.
but the thing she did for me that helped the most was she always acted like we were rich. Like she always acted like everything was fine.
Right.
Like it wasn't that feeling of like, I knew it wasn't good at times, but she always made it feel like we were okay. She lived outside of her means, even like in the house that we lived in and things like that, just for us to feel like we were in a normal, good scenario. Dude, which is crazy awesome looking back on. Like, I can't wait to spoil her as I get successful.
I love it. Yeah.
Because that helped me a lot growing up. But my relationship, I think, was an understanding of those two sides. So I didn't come from money by any means, but I definitely got to understand how different people acted with it.
And was it like your experience with working with like scaling 0% or just being in with Oracle and getting deeper into like that sort of arena that helped you expand in that? Because I mean, you and I have talked about sort of the sequence of like where we think people should go with it. And I want to talk about that, but like, yeah, how did yours like continue to evolve?
Yeah, so I thought like I didn't know people had such differing opinions on money until my friend Jeff, the one that I had started that other company with. Jeff's like super abundant minded and is not scared to spend money at all. Like especially if he thinks it's gonna grow stuff. So seeing a friend like that willing to like just throw it out there, I was like, wow, okay, this is like a different scenario than what I'm used to. So I was like, it was actually really, really cool to be able to experience different sides of that. And I think I got a lot of benefit out of seeing the way different business owners interact with their own money, and knowing when to take risk and when to not take risk. There's obviously like a spectrum of like, how risky people are with their money and how frivolous and different things. So it was interesting to see that. I think I've developed my mindset around money over a long period of time. So just different points along the way.
Right.
But to your point earlier, I think what really helped me was understanding being an employee means you're a cog in someone's wheel.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing either, by the way. Like
people poo-poo it so much, like in the entrepreneur space.
Good thing for early people. Like that's
100%.
The best way is to go have a good skill, to use it to make money. Like people should not be shitting on that.
And that experience is so much more valuable than like the salary.
You make
and
connections. You make you got to start somewhere. That's the good place to start. And I actually don't think you should skip that. Like I tried to skip that, and it backfired a lot. So anyway, you have an employee, and then you have self-employed, and self-employed means that you have that same, maybe it's the same skill, or it's a skill that you can go out and you can sell not to one business, but to multiple businesses, perhaps.
AKA more leverage. You have more leverage now.
Exactly. And you've basically bought yourself a job is what you've done. And you still have to do the work. You're the one doing the work. So you're self-employed, meaning you're the one getting the work and doing the work, but it's not really a business yet because you're not selling something that people need that you're not involved in.
Right.
That's when it goes from employee to self-employed. Self-employed to business is when you own a set of operating systems that run and produce you cash.
Right.
That's the best scenario, because then that's how you can maximize the leverage and make a lot of money.
Right.
But then there's actually a level beyond business owner. So there's employee, self-employed, business owner, and then there's investor, which means you're an investor into businesses and systems that produce money.
Yes.
That's even higher leverage.
Right.
And then there's actually levels above that we don't have to get into on this call, but above all of those, there's syndications, there's funds, there's ways that you can invest other investors' money into businesses and other things.
Which is something that you're involved in. I definitely do want to talk about it a little bit, but let's just going back a little bit. Like I love that distinction. And for me, like I didn't have that first experience of being quote unquote a business owner until my experience last year with a partner of scaling a financial consulting company as well, because I felt that in 2020 before pandemic times. I was in that scenario of I transitioned out of being employed, of having like a full-time actual job, to being self-employed. And it was basically like I was working full-time for 3 or 4 different clients, and I felt it very, very distinctly. Like I am hitting a ceiling, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And now looking back on it, I understand that like I was scaling me and my time, and I was only had so much leverage. But like that there, as you go up that ladder, you realize that like what you're leveraging at the beginning, when you're self-employed, you're leveraging essentially your time. And then as you become a business owner, you're leveraging labor. And as you're becoming an investor, you're leveraging capital, and like you're just leveraging different types of things. And that opens up the door for different things. But in your and I'm going through it right now with productizing the service of systems of wealth and experiencing that a little bit. And it's difficult for me because I've always sold me as the marketing consultant operations guy. And it's just like, I do it, it's easy. But now I'm like packaging it up, and it's a much different approach. But when you did that with like 0%, like what was your how did you what was your experience with just managing kind of the sales ops and productizing the service and scaling that so much? Like what were the kind of the big levers that you guys were pulling to see that success?
Yeah, that one's weird because it still had that brand face and that name, and there was the coaching involved. And so it was almost like we were like cheating in a way, because we were still leveraging the big benefits you get out of selling yourself.
Yeah.
That really was the selling point for a while. Had Jeff and Tyler not been, those were the people that were kind of the face of the brand.
Yep.
Had Jeff not been the face of the brand, it would not have worked, I don't think. Interesting. So there was a way that we had still leveraged the face and productized a lot of things around the face, and still mitigated his time commitment.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do that, but I still think that's not, you don't build much enterprise value doing that. And what I mean by enterprise value is the business isn't very sellable, because it's heavy cash flow and it's very reliant on this person.
Yeah.
So who are you going to sell that business to?
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this, like in your, now that you have been involved in that business, and you've scaled your own marketing company with Notabot, and now running the software with Piggy Banker, like what is your favorite one to be involved in? Or do you just like the ability to be involved in different ones? Like how, and obviously it's requiring different skills, but yeah, what's been your experience with that?
Yeah. So Nana bought my marketing company. We started as a service-based business where we were sending personal videos on behalf of businesses.
Which I loved. And that
I
was
did.
our initial like interaction together, was you helping us with that last year. Yeah.
That was when we switched to consulting. I actually didn't scale the service side because I
Oh,
couldn't do
wow.
it.
Oh, okay.
I was not successful enough
Okay.
at, we had it was easy to sell, and it actually had a good very good proposition, but we couldn't get the results that we wanted to get for our clients. So we're
Okay.
like, it was way too hard to scale. There's so many people involved,
Yeah.
and it takes so much time to send a good personal video.
Right.
So we just couldn't figure out the operational complexities there to actually make it work at scale and get results. So we pivoted to consulting, where we would just basically show people how to do what we were doing that worked for us. And that worked a little bit better. And it just was kind of a similar business as to what I was in before. And I'm, to be honest, got kind of bored of it.
Mm.
And I was like, I keep doing these businesses that are no enterprise value. The potential is reliant on me.
Yes.
And that's again, we're kind of in that self-employed box. It's
Right.
like, we're on first base. We made it out as employee. We're self-employed. It's honestly sometimes worse than having a job. Sometimes having a job is better.
Yeah.
You don't have to get the leads.
Yeah, you're good.
So I mean, I was in that weird scenario where I was like, dude, these kind of suck. Like, and the only way those businesses don't suck is this. It's if you can make a very high leverage use of time for money. And that's what I do nowadays, is I still use those types of businesses.
Yep.
So I'll use that type of businesses to go do consulting work where I can make a high amount of time for money for my time. And then what you have to do is you have to know how to deploy that into long-term assets that will produce you cash flow that are stable, because that work is not stable and it's not always going to be there.
Yep.
But you can make money fast and you can make a lot of it upfront.
Yes.
So you take that and let's say you make 10 grand or 20 grand in that month doing that consulting work. Well, now you have, let's say you live on 3 grand. Now you have 17 grand realistically that you could go put into real estate, or you could go put into another business.
Right.
You could go develop something else with. And that's where I think the leverage is on the self-employed. Nice. So you go from employee where you're making money, saving it, your income is capped unless you're in sales. And then you move to self-employed so you can uncap your income, leverage your time better, and then deploy that money elsewhere. And that's how you can kind of escape that self-employed bucket.
Right.
Outside of that, the only way is to then start a successful business,
right?
Of which those are very hard to do.
100%.
Like software companies, anything with enterprise value, like anything that's like legit are a little bit harder than
you just can't ignore the sequence or like the step in the phase of the system of ownership of assets, whether it's like assets that are producing you a dividend, like stocks, all that good stuff, or ownership of an asset like a business. Like I don't, as much as like you and I have gone so deep into just the world of like wealthy individuals and how people make obscene, absurd amount of money and become wealthy and rich in their lifetimes, like it's either through owning like a business as an asset, or owning how we define assets in normal kind of sense of like a stock and crypto and getting that good stuff. So there's something that you and I have talked about a lot that I want to just very succinctly put in this podcast, because it's something that I've always reflected on, that I've always really liked. But again, just to like go back through that sequence of like what you and I have always talked about, like first things first is have skills, be valuable, right? Like that's number one. Yeah. And then it's like create a business, that you're creating a surplus of capital. And the best way that I've always done is just, the consulting work, marketing consulting, video editing, graphic design. There's so many ways to do it.
It starts with your skills. Like what's a high income skill that, and high income skill also means how much time does it take you to do the thing?
Yes.
High income is a ratio, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like if you're an investment bank, I have a bunch of friends that are investment bankers that are analysts that work 100 hours a week, and like they're making, they make 150K a year, 200K a year. And it's like, you think that's balling until you realize that's all they can do.
Right.
Like, it's like, that's not really the best. Like that's 2 jobs. That's just 2 regular jobs they're working.
Right.
So yeah.
So then, it's skills, it's creating that surplus of capital while still obviously having some parameters and like respecting your time a little bit. And then you like taking care of the long-term wealth building, like the basics of just like automating and putting some stuff on automations of just like maximize like the, again, nothing we say is financial advice and light and, consult with a, but like, maximizing that stuff out. And then what you've helped me understand is the asymmetric bet risk kind of taking, in a sense of like taking, relative small amounts of money and placing it in places, that could earn you an outsized return. I had never,
I don't think that's talked about much.
no, and I that was very not like foreign to me, but actually understanding it and the way that you like increased my own mental like capacity of what I thought was existing or what could be possible and like the approach to that. Cause I've always just been very compound interest, passive, like just allocate my money and not think about it.
That's all people teach if they're talking about investing.
100%, which like for the most,
which is for, sound, if you don't have a lot of money, that's the move.
Fine. You're right. 100%. But if you find yourself in a position where you're creating that surplus of capital, I mean, like obviously the asset class that we do it in and that you and I, have built a program around is like with the crypto stuff, but like, how do you approach your sort of asymmetric bet as you are analyzing a certain project of like the money that you're going to place somewhere? Like, what's your approach to that?
Yeah. To break it down so people understand what you're talking about, it's like we have the way we think about it is we like the best sequence for young people like ourselves that are trying to make a lot of money and trying to get freedom as quickly as possible. The sequence is this. It's like active income is first. Active income means your job or you're self-employed or whatever skills you have that make you money. You should be redeploying into active income, like learning more, paying money to learn more skills or to learn them faster in the beginning of the game, because that's how you're going to make more money. So you got to start with active income.
You're the asset in that.
Yes.
Invest in you.
Like,
you're the asset.
Don't suck first. So figure out how to not suck. Right. And then once you're good on that and you're like, okay, I have marketable skills that are high time for money leverage. Then what you do is the next step is you want to take care of the long-term investments.
Yes.
So long-term investments, what I mean by that is very most simple thing you could do. I think it's $6,000 now. Put $6,000 into your Roth IRA. It's tax-free when you retire at 65 or 60, whatever the number is. Just max out your Roth IRA. I think you have to have a surplus of like $458 a month to be able to do that, to max out your Roth IRA.
Yep.
So if you have enough money, you're making enough money that you're just scraping an extra $6,000 a year, you should just put it into your Roth IRA. And then any other money you make, you need to keep reinvesting back into your active income till you can make more money.
Bingo.
So keep learning more skills until you can surpass that. What you should then do after you've taken care of your long-term, if you can't do that, by the way, if you are not at the stage where you can invest $6,000 a year into your Roth IRA, go back to step one.
Yeah,
keep investing money.
Keep working.
Keep trying to increase your earning potential.
First. Again, put all of that back into yourself until you
reach the first surplus mark, which is $6,000 a year. Once you reach the $6,000 a year mark and you've taken care, you've covered that future self that's retiring when you're 60. That's great. That's step one. But what most people don't consider after that is, what if you don't want to be rich when you're 65? What if you want to be free when you're 40?
Yes.
Or in the next 8 years,
right,
or in the next 10 years, or the next 15 years. Everybody's goals are different. Everybody's risk tolerance is different. But I think a lot of people just neglect, okay, you've already taken care of your future self. If you just have $6,000 in a Roth IRA and you start when you're 22 or 25 and you let it go to your 60 or 65, you're going to have somewhere between like $1 and $4 million in an account sitting there to retire on. So like 100%. You're going to be fine. So again, you've taken care of the long-term, always do that first. That way you can make bets. So that brings us into the next category. It goes active, long-term, and then you have asymmetric bets. And the reason we put this one next, there's one more bucket I'll talk about, but the reason we put this one next is because this one is skippable. If you have no risk tolerance and you're like, look, I only like want to play the super long game, you can skip this bucket. But this is the bucket. Asymmetric bets means high reward with as little risk as possible. It's also a ratio. Asymmetric doesn't mean go take crazy amount of risk. Asymmetric means you have the potential to make high rewards with relatively low risk. So that's the only way you find those opportunities. People are like, well, how does that exist? You always hear high risk, high reward. low risk, low reward. Like that's typically the name of the game. The way you find asymmetric bets that are high risk or high reward and low risk is by having more knowledge about a certain particular area or space than anybody else has. You have to have an unfair advantage of knowledge or something that gives you an edge to where people don't know as much about this as you do. And that's why you're so comfortable making this particular bet.
Which is another form of leverage in that sense. Like in that sense, it's knowledge.
Exactly. And you can find these asymmetric bets, one, by being very involved in a particular area. So usually the high income skills that you keep re-leveraging into and you keep reinvesting into, those skills usually lend you to learn about those asymmetric bets that you can put.
Yes.
But what I mean by that is like, if you have an opportunity where you can take 10 grand and you could put it into a startup, or you could put it into crypto, or you could put it into, some real estate deal, or you could put it into buying a connection from someone that could give you something.
Right.
Those are all asymmetric bets where that 10 grand, let's say that 10 grand has the potential to turn into $1 million. That's crazy, insane potential, right? Like you're not going to get that out of any regular off the wall, off the shelf investment.
Right.
But those do exist out there. And I think everybody should be hunting for those. And trying to create more of those opportunities, because what's the worst case that could happen? Let's say you invest in some crypto you think is going to do really well, and you put 10 grand in. The 10 grand's not life-changing money to you, but it goes to zero. Okay, that sucks, but 10 grand going to zero for the potential upside of it being at $1 million is worth making that bet every single time. At least for me it is, because I want to be rich when I'm younger than when I'm older.
Yep.
So all you need is one asymmetric bet over the course of your life to pan out for you to be completely financially free forever.
Yes.
The second the asymmetric bet plays out, you then take the risk off the table and diversify into all the other stable assets that produce you cash flow over the long term.
Yep.
So that's the general game plan. And then after the asymmetric bets, you have passive cash flow investing, which is like you're buying equity in businesses, you're buying long-term real estate, you're buying dividend stocks, you're buying very long-term things that are safe, stable, going to produce you cash for the very long term. And that's how you build real wealth, is that last bucket. But the asymmetric bet is your ignition switch to get to your freedom, your number of financial freedom way faster.
Dude, that was so beautiful. And like, seriously, I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is just like, they have this idea of being, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be rich, I want to be wealthy, but it's not defined. There's not really a clear path that we know what to take. And so just laying it out that way, like it gives me confidence. Like this is what I'm actively already doing this, but it gives me like confidence of knowing what I'm doing. It gives me just like peace and a little bit more harmony in my life. And then what I loved about it so much is like, I then come back to my active income streams. Because I think where people get struggle is like, they see the term passive income, especially with online. It's like, build this passive income online business opportunity sort of thing. And it's like, I don't want my business to be passive. Like work is the goal. Like, yeah,
it's the move.
It's 100%, 100%. And, but I do think that like, there is some sort of, like there's a balance or a harmony between financial independence or freedom, whatever you want to call it, being a real destination of like where you get to the point where your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses, and like the yield is paying for the taxes on that as well. Like you're completely like self-sustaining. And that obviously is a defined destination that we can all get to. And that number obviously looks different, but it's for sure a feeling where you can get to a point where you're like, I am completely in control of my time, my location, what I work on, who I work with. And that, like, I don't need to sacrifice like that over the long term just to get to this point where like I'm delaying myself of like, I'm going to be rich. It's just like, you don't really want the money in the account.
Stuff you hate for that idea of doing stuff you hate right now. There's a balance between this, but doing, like, broadly speaking, for the next 10 years, if I do something I hate for the idea of doing nothing later on, is a dumb idea. It's not the move. It's not the move. Now I'm not saying like you obviously have to do stuff you don't like. There's stuff that's just part of the game. And a quick side note on that, like with football, like when I made it on the football team, it was hard as shit.
Oh, of course.
The whole rest of the time.
Absolutely.
It was never like, there were times where I was super depressed on the team.
Yeah, right.
Like, you're in camp and you're dying. They're like, there are things you want to do in life that are hard
Yes.
but would I have rather been anywhere else than on that team? No, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing at that point in my life. And yes, it was hard. And my brother and I have talked about this before, where he had a different scenario. Like, he was a pilot, he was in flight school.
Mm-hmm.
He achieved like this crazy stuff about making it all the way through the Air Force to where he was at. And he got to the point where he was about to have to sign a 10-year contract, like literally the thing we're talking about, 10-year contract to fly. He ended up having to fly heavies, and it was going to be something he didn't want to do. And to back out in a scenario like that and to go choose your own happiness over what was laid out before you as supposed to be your path
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of balls. It takes more balls to do that and go the other way.
Dude, yes.
And so my brother made that decision to not go down a 10-year path that wouldn't make him happy in life after
Right.
experiencing the things he experienced. So there's a balance to both sides of that story. But doing stuff you just deliberately don't like at all and has no value for you just to make money to at some point in the future be free. The feeling you're chasing is freedom. And people don't realize that they can get that feeling right now, today, right this second.
Mm.
The reason, like Noah, the reason both of us want a ton of money is because in our heads, once we have a ton of money, we're going to get this magic moment of the shackles are off. There's
Right.
this freedom feeling of
Yeah.
like,
And then I can
wow,
do this. Right.
I'm free and now I can do this. The
Yes.
thing is, just think about the feeling that you want of that, and you can already get that feeling.
Already have
right
it now.
Life
Yes.
hacks, you got the feeling, and you could just go do whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
no one's stopping you from already
No.
doing whatever you want.
100%. Like, when you really liberate yourself and let go of those constraints, like, you really do understand that, like, man, I'm in total. And like, I know that's a little, I don't know. You and I obviously really truly believe in like manifesting the subconscious and like all of that, like, kind of, I wouldn't call it woo, but just some of the stuff that like obviously isn't super
Yeah.
tactical that, like, most entrepreneurs aren't going to,
Yeah.
dive into, but like that stuff exists. It's real. Like, the energy that you and I give, like back and forth with each other when we're on like coaching calls, whatever it might be, like that stuff exists. It's real. And yeah, I mean, like all of those thoughts, like the things that we tell ourselves on a normal day, like that stuff compounds. It always will appear in your realistic physical life.
For people that don't want to believe in like anything that's woo woo either, there's stuff like natural laws. Like, there's one person that described it to me like this one time. They're like, look, everything, like they like were convincing me that there's no such thing as luck. This was their pitch. They were like, there
Okay.
is no such thing that exists. There's only cause and effect. And the reason you think there's luck on certain things is because there's a bunch of causes that you don't see that create effects that you don't understand because you forgot the cause of them or you don't know the cause of them. So he's like, everything has this cause and effect relationship.
Wow.
And he was basically saying like all the energy you put out, all the things you do, all the actions you take, everything has its effect, but you can't correlate what the cause was to the effect. And
Right.
sometimes it's way later on. It's like, an example of this is if I asked you like, what did you eat 4 weeks ago on Wednesday for lunch? It's going to be pretty hard for you to remember what that was.
Right.
But then if you look in the mirror 6 months from now, that had an effect on that.
Oh, wow. Very well put. That's really interesting. Jeez. Okay. I got another question for you. Like, part of, and we haven't really totally touched on it yet, but I think a big part of growth as an entrepreneur is networking and being around the right people. Like you said, like when you were around Jeff, like, that was the first time that like you saw somebody being so abundant with money. And I had the same experience when I moved to Vegas in 2020, when I was around Danny, who was doing 100K a month in his agency. I'd never been around somebody that was legitimately operating a 7-figure business. And I got to see and live with him and really like experience what that was like. And so, and I know when you and I talked about this recently, when you went to the investor conference in Vegas, and you were around some of these very high net worth and crazy high net worth individuals, like, and there was something that like you expanded on it for a little bit, with me, but like, I want to ask you, like, what in your take, like when you were around people like that, like a billionaire or someone that's managing $100 million in like a hedge fund or something like that, like, what is the biggest difference between like a 6-figure, 7-figure entrepreneur and someone that is operating at that level? Or is just like, what do you see is like, what's their difference? Like, how do they approach it?
Dude, most of the time it's the games that people are playing. Like they don't like,
oh, wow.
the entrepreneurs don't think big enough, which it sounds so corny and weird to say that, but I literally mean that with like the most sincerity that I can. Like, I talked to a real estate investor, and he literally, this is the example he gave me. He said, I had a single family portfolio for a very long time. That's all I did. I did single family. It's what I knew, right? It's like what I thought I could achieve. So this is like what I was doing. He was like, it's the same difficulty to do a single family deal as it is to do a $100 million,
Oh,
$60 million
yeah.
real estate deal. It
Right.
takes the same amount of
Huh.
effort, energy, life force, like focus. It takes the same amount of stuff to make that successful as it does to make one of these big ones work out. And he's like, what people don't realize is that like, you just like, you're playing the game too small. Like,
Hmm.
you need to go and try to play the bigger game. And usually once people have the taste of that success, then it works. That's why you always see people go up step by step, and then they
Right.
slowly make it there. And that makes logical sense to their brain. And most people don't want to operate outside of the logic, thinking that I could just go somehow get involved in $100 million deal. How would I
Right.
do that? There's no way that that's possible, but I can assure you that that is a possible
Yes.
thing.
Right.
It's just like your mind has to be tuned to that level of opportunity.
Yeah.
And yes, you had to have put in the work. You have to know, you have to make connections with people. You have to get, you have to be able to present yourself in such a way that you can bring value to something at that level. There's so many like little things you can do, but it is possible to have a leap where all it takes is one big deal. Like,
Right.
what's stopping you from like reaching out to a guy that runs a fund that runs $1 billion real estate fund, and somehow getting that person's attention and doing one deal with this guy over his
Hmm.
life? Just one deal. Like, what's stopping you from trying to somehow find a way to be of value to that specific person, whether that's bring a deal to him, whether that's bring investors to raise money for him, some way to bring value to him, and then try to work yourself into a deal. It's like there's nothing stopping anyone from doing that. It's just they just don't think it's possible.
Right.
They don't try for
I'm not
big
good
things.
enough. Yeah. I don't know where to get started. I don't know what to do. And they
Yeah.
just nobody. And then, I mean, like
So
if
it's
you, yeah, go ahead.
easier to start small,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
But
Start.
it's
You
really
got to
not. It's
start.
the same. It's the
Yeah.
same level of effort. It's
Dude.
just as hard to start
Yes,
small. It
that
is.
like I think Hormozy said it in one of his videos. Like it takes the same amount of effort to run a small business as it does like a big business. And I was just like, oh man, like it's funny because it takes you like stretching your own mental capacity to get to exiting out of like taking the risk of like exiting out of a business to like being self-employed and running your own thing, right? Like that already
Yes.
is challenging. But it's
It,
funny to think about it at every step of the way of an entrepreneur. Of like, I think that like, I was able to build like a six-figure consulting business. It's like I'm still thinking so small. Like you get like hyped and happy about it, and you're like, oh man, when I get around you or these other guys, I'm just like, oh man, like I still am really, really playing such a small game. And it's really just my own mind.
so there's a balance, right? Like it's balancing your mind and knowing the way that your mind works, because to some people, like, oh yeah, I can just do $100 million deal or whatever. It's like that doesn't even seem possible for them. And so what I challenge people to do, it's the same small steps you have to take. And I haven't done one of those deals either. So I'm in the same boat. Like I still have to do these myself.
Right.
But I think they're possible. That's the difference. So it's the same small steps. Like in order to start a business, you have to go and do step number one. You have to find you have to write the offer up. You got to get on a sales call with someone. You got to pitch them. You got to close them. You got to get the deal inked. You got to convince someone of this. You got to do this. It's all those tiny little steps. You can start with all those tiny little steps, but have a way bigger vision in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And like do those tiny little steps, but for a way higher leverage opportunity.
Wow.
So that's the difference. It's all the same tiny little steps to get something done, but the way, the opportunity vehicle that you're going after,
yes,
or the just the people you're trying to reach out to. I had this epiphany because I did marketing and I was doing lead generation, meaning I was sending one-on-one personal videos to get leads for people's businesses that were worth maybe $1,000. And so I'm putting all this energy into it. And I wasn't really excited about sending the video because I was like, what's the best case scenario that's going to happen? This person's going to get on a call. They're going to be a $1,000 client for this other client that's not even my client.
Yeah.
It's hard to get excited about doing that.
Right.
But all of a sudden, if you change that from, if I can get a hold of this person, there's a chance I can get 1% equity in $100 million real estate deal. That could make you way more excited, change your energy, and all of a sudden now making videos makes a lot more sense.
Dude,
and I started realizing that, why am I sending videos that aren't the highest leverage videos I could send? Most people on the internet right now won't do this, but if you wrote a list of 100 people down of the top most like high leverage people you could reach out to, these are people that aren't necessarily famous. You want people with high net worths that are less famous that you can get a hold of. That's the sweet spot.
Right.
And you made a list of 100 of them, and you made them a video asking for anything they're working on, how you could be a value and earn equity in the upside of it. You made a video to all 100 of those people. I guarantee with almost 100% certainty, one of them would have responded back and you'd be in a situation like that.
Dude, that's amazing. Seriously.
But nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that.
I know. It's no, 100%.
Even I wouldn't do it, but I would do, I do that. I just haven't done 100 in one list.
Right.
Like a deal I'm working right now is because of doing that. So it definitely works. It's just how much sheer willpower do you want to put into it?
Man, oh man, I said it from the top. You are someone that that inspires me, that motivates me, someone that I just think like you approach and you live like, in my opinion, the right way. Like I love your approach. I've always just tried to adopt it and weave it into like the way that I approach things too. I really, really just value that so much. One last question I want to leave you with. Who are like some of your, like, who are some of the biggest kind of mentors, and people that like have had a big impact on you over your experience in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me think real quick. I'll just bullet point throw people out there that have listened a lot to, that I think have steered me in the right direction. Obviously my family first. So like my grandpa, my mom and my dad and my grandma.
I love that you started there.
That crew is like very, very tight knit. And then I would say my brother as well. Me and him are like very on the same wavelength and a lot of stuff. He's like my best friend. So that's very important. I think those people have like really given me a good foundation. But I can't take everything from them, if that makes sense.
Yep.
There are definitely things around money and other things that I don't listen to them at all about.
Of course.
I listen to them about specific things that they're all take from.
That's the role they play in your life, of course.
Yeah. And so other things though, like I've learned a ton about relationships and family and like how I want to future raise my kids and stuff. This sounds weird, but from Jesse Itzler. And as well as business, like he's probably my go-to for how I think about business and thinking big and doing that. So Jesse's been a massive.
Is he a billionaire? He's a billionaire, right?
Yeah, his wife is a billionaire.
Goodness gracious.
Also, I think Jesse probably is. Yeah, Jesse's probably a billionaire too.
Crushing. That's amazing.
Was worth like several $100 million on his own, but his wife's also a billionaire, so they're just both crazy.
Russian.
His life, dude. Yeah, he's somebody that I really admire because the way he lives his life.
Yes, love it.
Super inspiring. So Jesse, Chad Wright, who I also kind of found semi through Jesse. Chad Wright's a Navy SEAL ultramarathon runner. I've learned a ton about mindset and mental toughness through him. Learned a ton about mental toughness through my football coaches, through those experiences there. Running 100 miles. I got all that advice from Chad, basically. And then I would say other ones, Sadhguru is a big one for me. I'm going on a hike with him. I would say Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Neville Goddard, and I would probably also say Joe Dispenza,
Dr. Joe, of course.
Tom Bilyeu, I listen to a lot. Rogan, I like Rogan because I like the way he lives his life as well. And then, yeah, I would say there's like other people that I look up to, but more of looking up Gary Vee, Warren Buffett, those types of people. More of like looking up to them and admiring kind of what they've done and been able to build.
I love it, dude. I love that. Like you're a lifelong learner, and you expose yourself to so many different capacities of what you want to be learning and just taking in. And like you just, what I've always loved about, obviously I'm a big reader and like stuff like that, is like you can be connected to people that like, especially with like the internet now, like there's so much leverage with the amount of education and what we consume. And I think it's just so important to be aware of the things that you're bringing in and the things that you're consuming and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, and I would
again,
also say the Bible real quick, and like
nice.
Jesus Christ, like the teachings from that. Like a lot of people, whether you're religious or not, I think it's like I've studied quite a few different texts just to not studied, but I've tried to dabble and watch videos about different things just
Yeah.
to broaden my horizons. But I will say that has awesome tried and true truths in it, that stories that are amazing, parables that are like super super awesome. So if someone like hasn't gone that route at all, I would recommend that as well.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's a big foundation of me too. I mean, my name is Noah and my middle name is Joseph. Like that was like
Yeah, there we
that's a
go.
that is a big part of my foundation. And like you and I could keep talking for hours. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Well, for sure, I want to have you back. I mean, we didn't even really get to go too deep into like our love for crypto and all that good stuff. Like there's so much more that I want to explore with you, and we'll for sure have you back. But again, Clay, thank you so much for your time, for all the value that you dropped on the episode
Thank
today.
you.
This was amazing. I'm still new to this, but I think hopefully I'll get this right. Please like and
Like,
subscribe
subscribe,
and
comment below.
comment below. And if you are listening on any of your podcast platforms, please follow and leave us a review. I didn't say that in the last one. Please leave us a review. I think that's the
You
main things you can do on that. But
follow
everyone,
Noah on social
yeah,
media. Got to do hit all the buttons. The more
hit all the
buttons you can,
buttons. And
that's
I'll link Piggy Banker in the description for anybody that wants to see more about Clay's finance tracker. I'm a user, big fan of it. So again, Clay, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone that watched, listened, thank you for your time, effort, energy, attention. I really appreciate it. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you all. Love you. Peace.